Hey, and welcome to my channel. Today I want to talk to you about how you can land a job in the battery industry with no prior experience. In my last video I actually talked about why the battery industry is such a great place to start your career. So now I want to explain how you can actually do that. So if you're currently a student or newly graduated, or maybe you just really want to work in the battery industry, then this video is for you. My name is Anna and I'm a German mechanical engineer based in Sweden. On this channel I talk about my journey as a young engineer and share everything I learn along the way. As you can probably guess already, I work at a battery manufacturer myself. I really enjoy working there, and I came up with 5 different strategies that I would use to get into the battery industry if I had to do this all over. So let's talk about them. The first strategy is just apply with a really good motivation. What I want to stress with that is that it's really not that difficult to get into the battery industry because it's such a young and fast-growing industry. So there's not a lot of highly qualified people with a lot of experience, and so you have a good chance to get in even with no experience or very little experience. And so if you want to use this strategy, then just Google for battery manufacturers, make a list of the ones where you want to apply. Think of a really good reason or really compelling story why you want to go into this industry. I think this is what actually counts most in this industry. Maybe it's because you want to support sustainability with your work and fight against climate change. Maybe it's because you think it's a really interesting industry to work in because of all of the different disciplines that are involved. Basically, in my last video you will find a lot of reasons that you could use. But if this doesn't work or you want to increase your chances, then I have a few more strategies for you. So strategy number 2 is educate yourself about the battery industry, battery production processes and battery cells. One of your advantages if you look for a job in the battery industry is that the pool of people with deep knowledge in batteries and battery production is very limited. So if you put even just 5 or 10 hours into learning the basics, then you will have a huge advantage over probably 90% of applicants. So this is actually something that also lots of my colleagues have said about searching for employees, that they really have a difficult time finding applicants that have any kind of background in the battery industry. And so even just a tiny bit of knowledge, a little bit of effort will go a really long way. And how can you educate yourself? If you're a student and your university offers a class on batteries, then obviously this is a great way to learn this, and also chat with the professor who probably has some connections to the industry. So this is a great way to do it, but of course not everyone is in university and not every university offers this. But there's also easier ways. You can also read a book from the library, of course, or believe it or not, there's already quite a few battery blogs that you could read that either talk about the news from the battery industry or just how a battery works, what technology you can use, all of these things. And if you want to go even deeper than that, then you can find lots of research papers online on battery design, battery manufacturing, and battery applications. Another thing you could do is attend online lectures or seminars or fairs that are hosted by either researchers from the field or companies in the battery industry. And this can be also a really great way to network, and believe me, there's not a lot of people with, especially not students with a lot of interest in batteries, so you will probably stand out a lot. And finally, you can also join battery-related groups on LinkedIn or follow battery companies or startups or also battery news sites. This is really a great way to see what's happening in the industry and get more familiar with different technologies, and also of course learn about jobs or new battery companies where you could apply. strategy number 3 is to use a lower barrier position to get into the company. Here I'm mainly talking about internships, degree projects like a bachelor thesis or a master thesis that you can write with a company, or a part-time job next to your studies at a battery company. I actually did all of these together with the point before. So I took a university course on battery manufacturing, and then I used that experience to get a summer internship at a battery manufacturer, and then I asked to do my master's thesis there as well as work part-time during that thesis. And when I was done, they actually offered me a full-time job, which I'm now working in. So this was definitely a way easier way in than if I had just directly applied for a full-time position. So these are the strategies I would use to start working directly at a battery company. However, if this doesn't work, then I have 2 more strategies for you that you can use to start a little bit sideways, so not directly at a battery company, but make your way in 1 or 2 years later. Strategy number 4 is to work at a customer or a supplier of a battery manufacturer first, and then transition directly into the industry. The reason this works is that there are some customers and suppliers that are less popular right now compared to battery manufacturers, and so you might have an easier way in, but you will learn almost exactly the same things there, or at least have really valuable experience that can easily get you a job at a battery manufacturing company later on. So let's talk about suppliers first. Suppliers, especially low on the value chain, are often not perceived as glamorous as working maybe for a large battery producer. So naturally there is less competition. But if you work at a supplier, you will of course learn a massive amount about your customer, the battery manufacturer. And even if you stay there just maybe 1 or 2 years, you will have a huge competitive advantage over someone else who has not had that experience, and therefore be a lot more likely to be hired in that industry. So what kind of companies am I talking about here? Just to give a few examples, these companies can be clean room manufacturers, machine builders, contractors, or even consultancies that work with the battery industry. And then of course the other option is to work for a customer of a battery manufacturer. This point is maybe not as obvious as the previous one, because the customers of the battery industry are of course mainly large and widely known companies that make cars or consumer electronics or household appliances that will likely be even more competitive. But again, there are also other fields that batteries are used in that are maybe not as popular to work in and therefore less competitive. Here I'm thinking of producers of heavy-duty vehicles or industrial machines that are becoming more and more electrically driven. Another big field is grid storage, which is needed by companies that produce energy, for example, with windmills or solar panels or hydropower. And if they don't produce very close to where the energy is consumed, then they can use, for example, really large batteries to store and transport the energy to their customers. And of course, all of these companies have departments, or at least positions, that are responsible for integrating these batteries into their products in the best way possible. And this is very valuable experience to battery producers, because they want to make batteries that work best in their customers' products. So that's another way to get work experience without working directly in the industry. Strategy number 5 is to start in an industry that uses similar processes or equipment as the battery industry. For this, it obviously helps to know with what processes batteries are made and which industries are similar. So I collected a few examples. First of all, mixing of chemicals. That's basically how a battery is made in its core, the so-called active materials in a battery. are a mix of different materials, and to make this you need to have, pipes and big kettles to mix things. So any industry that does this, for example, the brewery industry or food industry in general, or wastewater treatment, all of these industries are really similar in that way. Secondly, any industry that uses so-called roll-to-roll processes is very relevant. So a roll-to-roll process is if a material is on a roll, then it's unrolled, processed in some way, and then put back onto a roll. These processes are really unique because if you have a really thin material on with high tension on a roll, you need to control this in a certain way so that it doesn't rip. And examples of this are aluminum foil, or any foil really that is produced, toilet paper, and newspaper printing plants that are also large rolls of paper on which the news are then printed. And the electrodes of batteries are made in a similar way. So you typically have aluminum foil and copper foil, which are cut into electrodes or winded up depending on if you have a square or a round battery. So any professional experience with these processes is of course very relevant. And finally, I want to talk about clean room technology. So in the battery production process, it's really important that the air in the production plant is clean and really dry and has a certain temperature. And any industry that has similar requirements is really valuable because it's very difficult to keep these processes clean, and you will use similar materials and mechanisms to do so. And examples of industries that work with clean rooms are the semiconductor industry. This is actually very clean, even cleaner than the battery industry. Then all the life sciences, so pharmaceutical or medical or food industry, usually a little bit less clean than batteries, like talking about the particle size, nonetheless very clean, and also it needs to be aseptic or sterile, which is not the case in batteries. And for batteries, clean room technology is so important because if particles, even just the thickness of a hair, end up in a battery, then this can cause this area to heat up, which will then melt the separation between the positive and the negative electrode and create a short circuit, and then the battery will heat up even more and likely explode or catch fire. So we obviously don't want that, and so it's really, really valuable to have knowledge about clean room technology, about decontamination or preventing contamination, and about which materials produce a lot of particles and which don't. So yeah, these were my 5 strategies to have a bit of an easier way into the battery industry. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments, and otherwise, if you like this video, feel free to subscribe and leave me a like if you like. So with that said, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I hope to see you in my next video. Yeah, I think that's fine.